Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning to show you a quick card using the Farmhouse DSP. I am absolutely in love with this. I had kind of skipped it over in the catalog until Ange McKay sent me a little packet of 6x6 pieces of this DSP, and I started using it, and I absolutely fell in love with the little designs here. All the different patterns. They make great masculine cards and just a nice softer look. There's some very vanilla mixed in here with the mellow with the mossy meadow and the cherry cobbler color. Some nice wood grain patterns, some words, and lots of those nice candy cane stripes. Just absolutely love it, and they all work so well together without kind of creating too busy of a look. So I chose this diagonal pattern today to use to make a card. I'll actually quickly show you. So this is the card that I'm going to be making today. So a 12 by 12 pack goes so far because with patterns like these I tend not to use them as a full background. So to get started with this card, I'm just going to glue this piece of 1 1/4 by 5 1/2 DSP onto a piece of 1 1/2 by 5 1/2 cherry cobbler. And I do like to use that liquid glue. I know some of you find it's a little bit messier, but I like it because I can kind of wiggle things around, place them where I want, because I am not very good at lining things up on the first shot. Alright, so with that done, I don't have any cherry cobbler ribbon, but I found that the real red ribbon, because it's in such a small quantity here on this card, actually doesn't stand out as being the wrong kind of shade of red. So I am going to use this really nice, it's the solid ribbon in real red, and so I'm going to use that to create a bow on my card. So I'd like my bow over on this side. Wrap that around a little bit extra. There we go. So when I'm doing bows, I try to start my ribbon with a little bit of extra exactly where I want my bow to be. I wrap around and then I tie a knot in that spot where I want my bow to be. There is a little bit of wiggle room to be able to move it around once you've got that knot tied, but I figure it's always best to kind of start how you plan to begin. Alright, so that is actually a pretty good position. I am going to be using some of our pearlized doilies today, well, just one. Usually I only use a portion of one, but today I'm going to use a whole one. And so I'm actually going to place that on my card and use that to help wiggle my bow around to get it to the right spot. I want my bow to be sitting just beside my doily. So that should be a good positioning. There we go. Now to tie the bow. This is all the fiddly stuff. Tying this bow is rather challenging for me. There we go. Got that. And once you've got your bow tied, you can leave it loose and just start to play with it. Oh, hi Kim. Nice to see you online. So just start fiddling around with it. You can kind of pull the ends and get your bow exactly how you'd like it. Now mine's turned a little bit sideways, but that's actually going to work well for this card because I have a sentiment going on the card below, and so I don't really want my bow to be blocking that. I'm going to trim up these ribbons so that they're both the same size. And there we go. Alright, so that was the fiddly part for me. I wanted to get that over with so that I can get on to having a little bit of fun with stamping. I'm going to move these things out of the way, and I'm going to bring in my Stamparatus, which I've set up. And you can see on here, I actually have some grid paper on here. This is super exciting news. This is not my regular grid paper that I've just cut down to size. Stampin' Up! Has actually come out with some accessories, and they now have a grid pad that is specifically designed for the Stamparatus, and so this is available to be ordered now. It's not in a catalog, but if you contact me or go on to my website, you'll find all the information that you need. So what I've done for today is I'm going to be embossing a deer on one of these little 2 1/8 circles. It's out of the Layering Circles Framelits kit die set. So what I did is I actually punched out a hole on here and I lined up my image inside the circle and then closed it so that it attached itself to my Stamparatus, and then I actually stamped and double checked that it was the right positioning. Now with this frame here, I'm able to pop in my pre-cut circle, so I can make many of these in a row now and have everything perfectly lined up. So I'm going to take some Versamark ink and ink up my deer. I've been doing a lot of embossing since even before I started my promo last week around the embossing powders. I've been doing a lot, but since then I've just refound my love for it. So here we go. We're going to stamp that image, pull that out. I'm just going to set my Stamparatus to the side and bring in my powders. So as you can see, I do have some older powders, but we still offer the silver, white, gold, copper, all of those colors. So I've just put a little bit of, well, actually a lot of silver powder on there. Oh, and I'm just remembering I forgot to rub this piece of paper with my embossing buddy. So we'll see what happens. Normally you see me emboss and everything comes out so perfectly clean. That's because usually I use my embossing buddy. So this is what happens when you don't use an embossing buddy. So I can tap off a little bit, and then the rest of this I'm going to have to come in with a paintbrush and remove it. Otherwise I'm going to end up with big silver splotches on my card, which I really don't want. So here's a really good reason to grab that very inexpensive little embossing buddy out of our catalog, because it saves you the trouble of having to get in here and clean up all of this extra embossing powder. Bit of a pain, and it's not going to come out nearly as clean as I would like it to, as it would if I had used that embossing buddy. Darn it. Okay, well, that's okay. So I'll tell you a bit about, while I'm cleaning this up, I'll tell you a bit about the other accessories that Stampin' Up! Has brought out to go with the Stamparatus. So they brought out that lovely grid paper. They've also brought out extra magnets, which I believe they already had, but they come in a 2-pack. So like when I was doing all that watercoloring, it's really nice to have an extra set of magnets, because then I can use the magnets to hold my watercoloring paper down so it doesn't curl when I'm doing some watercoloring. So that's a really nice nice thing to have, the 4 magnets to be able to hold down all the sides. And then they brought out extra plates. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. Typically when I work on the Stamparatus, I have more than one card going that I want to kind of have prepared, and I don't have more than one Stamparatus. So now you have the ability to buy a 2-pack of plates, and then you can have either extra layers, like if there's lots of things that you want to line up on a card, you can have all those extra layers and not worry about crossing the inks. Or you can just have multiple cards set up. So, you know, you can work on a couple of birthday cards for a little while and then switch over and work on your Christmas cards and have everything so that you don't have to reline things up. So, super handy. Very excited about that. But the grid paper is just wonderful. It's going to save my little black foam mat, because I keep getting ink on it and trying to find ways to keep ink off of it. So that grid paper will be wonderful. All right, so now that I've got that all cleaned up, it's going to get a little loud because I'm going to emboss this now with my heat tool. So here we go. Cover your ears. So now we have this very beautiful little silver deer. These also have the dies that match up with them. Today I'm going to keep him whole though. Just let him cool off a little bit. While I do that, I'm actually going to grab my Stamparatus back. And I'm going to switch, oh, something's stuck. Oh, I have a magnet still in the back and I picked up my pen. There we go. So I'm going to remove my deer for now, remove my circle. And I've got a piece of Sahara Sand cardstock here, cut just in standard cardstock size, or card front size, 5.5 by 8, or 8, 5.5 by 8.5, so that creates a standard card. And I'm going to grab my black Memento ink. I'm going to ink up my sentiment. And that's all lined up for me. Just lay that down. And so I'm looking at this and it didn't get quite as dark as I would like just over on the side. So that's the wonderful thing about the Stamparatus, is I can just go back in and re-ink that. And it's going to stamp in exactly the spot I want it to stamp in. There we go. So I was able to darken that up, no problem, no mirrored images or anything like that. So really nice. And then I can close that up and put it to the side. So I love having that grid paper because it leaves me feeling confident that I'm not going to get ink all over my foam mats or on my Stamparatus. Alright, so the next step with this card is actually to emboss the background. I'm using the Gently Falling embossing folder. And I would have liked to have it kind of heavier at the bottom, but that's actually where I chose to put my words. So we're going to kind of do this a little bit backwards. It's falling heavily and hasn't stuck to the ground yet, which is actually probably the best kind of snow. There we go. So I'm going to put this through my Big Shot now, so just give me a second. It's over on the other side of my studio, and then I will be right back. All right, so there we go. So not sure, can you see that? It created those lovely little snowflake look on there. So that's the Gently Falling embossing folder. With that part done, we're ready to actually just kind of put the card together now. I'm just going to use a little bit of snail on the back of this to attach it to one of our pearlized doilies. Now when you're using the doilies, make sure that you're little, maybe had your cup of coffee this morning, because one side is pearlized and one side is matte. This is a great side. You can color it, use inkers, and get all sorts of nice colorful doilies. But today I'm going to use that pearlized side. And I'm going to line this up. Alright, so with that lined up like that, I'm going to actually put a few dimensionals onto the back of this. And I've ran out of whole ones on here, which is fine. I'm just going to use some scissors and cut up the edging, and that gives me some extra pieces. So I'm going to set that to the side now. I'm going to grab this piece, and because I'm going to be attaching a bunch of things to this and it's already quite heavy with the ribbon and the cardstock, I'm actually going to use my Terran tape to make sure that this piece stays in place and the edges stay flat, because it is going directly onto my card front. I don't want any corners turning up or anything as I try and put it into the envelope. So don't need too much along the top and the bottom. It was more the edges of the card that I was worried about getting a full coverage on. There we go. Alright, so while I'm peeling this and sticking it on, I just wanted to let you know as well that I have posted my newsletter for October, and there is a lot going on this October. I have got a bunch of classes happening at home. I've got a little bit late. I'm going to celebrate World Card Making Day, which is actually happening all this week. I'm going to celebrate it on October 14th with a free event at my place. So make sure you check that out online and RSVP for that. And then later in the month, I have a girls' night on October 25th and a Dashing Deers card class happening on October 25th. And that Dashing Deer set includes this little deer that we're using today, as well as we'll be using the die cuts and all the rest. So really looking forward to that class. So make sure you go online. You can sign up for my newsletter so you don't miss out on these things in the future. And you can also see my newsletter online and register for events through my website. So make sure you check those things out. And a World Card Making Day as well. Stampin' Up! Has a huge sale going on right now. All those awesome little card kits and a few other items from the catalog are all on for discounted prices right now. So definitely go on to my website and check that out. Alright, so final touch on this card is just to add a little bit of bling. So I've just got some of our basic jewel rhinestones, and I'm just going to pop a few of those onto this card front. There we go. And that is our completed card using the Farmhouse DSP and one of the stamps from the Dashing Deer set. So I hope you enjoyed that card today, and definitely make sure you go on to my Facebook page, facebook.com/the Stampin' Pad, and check out all the amazing deals that are happening right now. See you next week. Thanks, Kim.